Someone in your life is always the victim. Every conflict ends the same way. They suffer. You apologize. You've been here before. You tried to have a conversation. Somehow, by the end, you were the villain. You didn't lose the argument. You lost before it started. The frame was set before you open your mouth. That feeling afterward, that you somehow cause harm you don't remember causing, has a name. It's called repositioning. Repositioning is when someone reframes the power structure of a conflict by claiming damage they did not receive. It isn't always conscious. Sometimes it's a survival habit, so old the person genuinely cannot see they're doing it. But whether it's conscious or not, the effect on you is identical. You leave every exchange smaller than you entered. By the end of this, you will recognize the structure. You will not be surprised by it again. Ever. Before psychology named it, a man who watched the courts of power described it with surgical, merciless precision. Most people believe conflict has a winner and a loser. That belief is the first thing victim behavior exploits. Victim behavior doesn't try to win the argument. It tries to change who the audience sympathizes with. Entirely different game. When sympathy shifts, accountability shifts with it. That's the mechanism. It's elegant and it's brutal. Pity is one of the most powerful social forces that exists. It overrides logic. It overrides evidence, often permanently. Your instinct is to defend yourself. That instinct is being used against you. Defense looks like guilt in this frame. Silence looks like guilt too. There is no correct move inside the frame once the frame has been accepted by others. The only exit is understanding the structure before you enter it. There is no exit from inside it. None. This is not about hatred or bitterness toward anyone. This is about seeing the architecture of what's actually happening. Niccolo Machiavelli spent his life watching people in power destroy each other. He wrote down what he observed without sentiment. He was not a cynic. He was a diagnostician. There is a difference, and that difference matters completely. He wrote in The Prince, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims." He wasn't celebrating deception. He was warning that the mechanism exists and operates whether you acknowledge it or not. The person in your life who always plays the victim is not an anomaly. Machiavelli met them in every court he entered. Pity is not a weakness in you. It is a human signal that evolved to protect the genuinely vulnerable. It's being hijacked. When pity is triggered in you, your critical thinking narrows. Evolutionary design. Someone worked out how to trigger it deliberately. The sequence goes, they escalate. You react. They perform injury. The witnesses see only your reaction and their pain. Drop in the comments if this has happened to you. I was blamed for reacting to something I was never allowed to name. Once the audience accepts the victim frame, everything you say to defend yourself becomes further evidence of your guilt. Structurally, this is why explaining yourself in those moments makes it worse. Not because you're wrong, because the frame is already locked. Machiavelli observed that men judge by appearances far more than by reality. The appearance of suffering outweighs the reality of the act. Knowing this doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you able to step out of the frame before it closes around you. It doesn't only happen with you. Look carefully. This person has the same dynamic with everyone significant in their life. The common factor in every conflict they've ever had is them. That's not accusation. That's pattern recognition. Pay attention to it. People who habitually play victim typically cannot sustain relationships past the point where others stop managing their emotions for them. When you stop managing their emotions, when you simply stop absorbing their distress, they often reframe you as an abuser. This is a documented psychological pattern. Researchers call it coercive enmeshment. Your calm becomes evidence of your cruelty in their framing. Drop this below if you've lived this. The moment I stopped reacting the way they expected, I became the problem. Once you see this pattern across their history, you cannot unsee it. That clarity is the beginning of your protection. This knowledge is for protection, not destruction. Understanding the pattern is not permission to become callous. It's permission to be accurate. Empathetic people are disproportionately targeted by habitual victim behavior. This is not coincidence. It is selection. An empathetic person will work harder to understand someone's pain. That effort is the resource being accessed. Your understanding is the target. The empathetic person will often doubt their own perception before they doubt the suffering person. The victim behavior relies on exactly that sequence. Machiavelli noted that men are moved more by fear and pity than by truth. He meant this as observation, not endorsement. If you are empathetic, your instinct when you doubt yourself is to give more. More time, more patience, more understanding, more access. That generosity is not stupidity. It is being decent in a dynamic that has been specifically designed to exploit decency. The response to this is not becoming cold. It is developing what psychologists call empathy with boundaries. Caring that has a perimeter. Caring that has no perimeter is not virtue. It is availability. And availability without discernment is a resource that gets depleted. There is always a social court being constructed around them. They are always quietly building a jury before the verdict arrives. They tell their version of events to shared friends before you know there's a version being told. Early narrative wins. When you finally speak, the people around you have already received a version of events that positions your words as defensive and self-serving. Machiavelli understood that he who controls the first story controls reality. Your truth arriving second is always fighting uphill. This is why arguing your case in these situations often fails, even when your case is entirely accurate and provable. The practical response is not to argue harder. It is to withdraw from their social court entirely. Stop seeking a verdict from their jury. Who actually matters? Not the constructed jury of mutual acquaintances. Your actual life is built with people outside that court. Drop this below if it's true. I spent months trying to defend my reputation to people who had already decided about me. Machiavelli wrote that a wise man does not enter every battle. Wisdom is knowing which fights subtract from your life rather than add. The most effective tool in habitual victim behavior is the guilt they leave behind in you after every exchange. It lingers deliberately. That guilt keeps you returning. You want to fix what you've been made to believe you broke. That impulse is the anchor. Psychologists call this guilt induction. The person does not ask you to feel guilty. They arrange circumstances so that you do it to yourself. Notice, they rarely accuse you directly. The suffering is simply made visible. Your mind fills in your own role without being told. This is sophisticated manipulation. It doesn't look like manipulation. It looks like someone who is simply, quietly, always in pain. The check. Does their suffering increase precisely when you try to establish a boundary? That timing is diagnostic. Note it. If their pain arrives exactly when your boundary arrives, the pain is a response to your boundary, not to an actual wound. Genuine suffering does not have perfect timing. It does not arrive exactly when it is most useful to arrive. Real pain is not strategic. When you see that timing, you are allowed to trust what you see. Your perception is not cruelty. It is accuracy. When you stop reacting emotionally, when you stay neutral, the dynamic shifts dramatically and quickly. They will escalate first. The escalation, when you fail to react, is itself diagnostic. It reveals the distress was a communication strategy, not a state. You are not required to manage their escalation. You are required to remain grounded in yourself. That is the full extent of your obligation. Machiavelli, a prince who cannot control his own reactions cannot control anything beyond his own reactions. Composure is leverage. Your emotional reaction was the product they came for. Remove the product and the transaction has no completion. They must move on. Drop this below. The moment I stopped explaining myself, the dynamic I have been trapped in for years collapsed on its own. Silence in these dynamics is not passive. Calm non-reaction is the most active choice available. It removes the fuel entirely. The people in your life who genuinely care about you do not require your emotional reaction as proof of your love. Notice who does. Real relationships do not require you to be constantly emotionally available as proof of your commitment. That requirement is a tax, not a bond. Drop this if it lands. The quietest person in the room is often the one who has learned the most about managing their own energy. Machiavelli watched the noisiest men at court lose everything first. The ones who remained were those who had mastered their own reactions. You have been reacting to a performance. The moment you see it as performance, the spell breaks. It cannot survive being accurately named. You have spent years apologizing for a crime the verdict of which was decided before the trial was ever opened. You do not owe anyone a version of yourself that destroys your own clarity in order to maintain their comfort with their narrative. You are allowed to trust your own memory of events. You are allowed to name what you experience without requiring anyone's validation. The version of you that absorbed blame to preserve peace has served its time. That role ended the moment you saw the structure. The pattern you now see will not leave your vision. That permanent clarity is not cynicism. It is the beginning of genuine discernment. You will give more freely now, not less, because giving from clarity is different from giving from guilt. The source changes everything. The relationships you now build will be built on different ground. Not on your usefulness, not on your guilt, on mutual reality. Machiavelli closed his notebook. He had seen what power does to people. He had written it down. His final gift was to name it. You have now named it too. Naming it is the act. The clarity that comes after naming is yours to keep. Nobody can take that. If this gave you language for something you already knew but couldn't name, that's what understanding human nature is actually for. Understanding human behavior doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you less manipulable. There's a profound moral difference. The channel exists for one reason, not to make you suspicious, to make you clear. Clarity protects. Suspicion only exhausts. Subscribe if that distinction matters to you. Share this with one person you think needs the language more than the confusion.